Is Prince Harry's insane jealousy over Prince William behind his recent court case against the news group, newspapers, and that phone hacking scandal? And what does it reveal about Harry's true intentions for the future of the British press? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we are going over some of the intricacies, some of the details of Harry's 31-page. That's right, that's not a mistake. 31 pages of gripes, complaints, just issues that Harry is bringing up again and again to the British newspapers because he is on a self-identified quest, guys. He is going to save the humanity by making the newspapers print just positive, glowing stories about Meghan Markle. Yep, that's right. So Harry is on this ridiculous quest, and throughout this 31-page witness testimony, you really get a sense of a guy who is not trying to fight for the greater good, but it's all internal. This is this guy's narcissistic gripe session about how he believes he was treated, how the palace sometimes hid things from him, even though he admits his own bodyguards might have to restrain him from one of the Murdochs, and also his insane inferiority complex to William. And it really just comes across as something so self-involved that really it holds no broader purpose for the rest of the public, despite what Harry says. In fact, he's completely missing the true danger of what's going on in our mediascape right now. So we're going to go into some of what he said because I pulled out so many quotes. It was so interesting, so revealing. And you just look at Harry and go, aw, bless your heart, bud. So we will go over all of that today, but if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, like I said, my name is Brittany, and on this channel I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news, and sometimes a little bit of gossip too. In addition, I will be reviewing movies and TV series and telling you a bit about history as well. So if you guys want to subscribe, that would be awesome. You guys will also be there as I cover the coronation next week. Yes, this time next week I will be in the UK, probably a little sleepy from my flight, and I'll be preparing to get down to the Royal Mile to get as close as I can to the front of the line for King Charles's coronation. Apparently they're setting up queues to get people to view it, so it'll be a bit more monitored than the initial one for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, at least my understanding, because at least for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, as far as I'm aware, there were no queues to get into the spaces to watch on the Royal Mile, and people could sleep right next to their spots. I don't think that's the case this time from what I understand. So I am super excited though, guys. I'm gonna go out there with some camera equipment, and I am prepared and gonna be trying to my best to get some great pictures and videos. I was there at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee last year. I did get a balcony shot, but I'm hoping to get more this time, and I'm just so excited. So if you guys want to come along with me, I'd love to have you. We'll be doing a lot of live streams just of my feelings and what it was like to be there for the coronation. Hopefully getting into that mosh pit in the mall for the balcony shot. I was there last time. It was awesome. It was awesome. I will not be at a mosh pit at a concert, but I was serenaded very close by Ed Sheeran when he sang for the Queen, so that was really awesome. So guys, if you want to come along with me, like I said, subscribe. I also have a couple other things. I have a weekly newsletter, Royal Wire. I also have a fashion channel dedicated to royal things, which I'm working on a video today for. And then I also have a upcoming trip to Germany and Austria. So if you are ever interested in hanging out with me and seeing some amazing castles, I would love to have you come by. It would just be such an incredible trip. I am thrilled. I love Germany. I love Austria. And I would just love to go with you guys and hang out for a little bit and talk about some of these more defunct royal families. And really, Bavaria is just gorgeous. I've been to Austria before, only Innsbruck, and it was just beautiful. So I think we will have an absolutely fabulous time. We'll start in Munich and end in Vienna. That is right. And the whole trip pretty much is going to different castles and palaces. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be a lovely time. So guys, again, I would love to have you there. And we also have, before we get into this whole Harry court case, Catherine and William are in Wales. They did a training with a search and rescue team today. They also got some pizzas to hand out to them, which was lovely. I thought it was rather funny that actually Catherine is carrying more pizza boxes than William, which I thought was kind of cute. And I just feel like I love sporty Kate. When Kate is out in like casual gear and like in nature. That is her element, and I just absolutely love to see her that. I mean, she can do everything. But every royal has those events that I feel like really bring them to life. And Catherine, it's anything outdoors, anything where she can be kind of sporty. I think those are her bread and butter. So it's just so exciting to see them out there. And we also have King's Day in the Netherlands. So yes, every year on the King's birthday, there is a mass celebration. So most of the senior members of the royal family were out. So this is King Wilhelm Alexander, his wife Maxima, their heir Princess Katharina Amalia, and their other daughter Princess Ariane. They do have a third child, Princess Alexia. She's the middle daughter, but she's actually currently studying in school in the UK. She's going to a high school there. It's where a couple of other royals have gone as well. So she just wasn't there today. But I just thought all the royal ladies looked lovely. Even though their outfits were bright, they kind of worked. I don't know why, but I felt like the brightness worked together, even though they just didn't totally go like they did. It was just, I don't know, it's hard to tell, but I just feel like they looked like they had a fabulous time. I was actually thinking about going this year because you had King's Day and then you had the religious ceremony of Princess Alexandra of Luxembourg, and then you had the coronation, but I'm glad I didn't because that would have been so much stress and everything to fit in for that trip. But hopefully next year, maybe in the next couple of years, I'd love to go to King's Day because everybody dresses up in orange because it's the Kingdom of Orange. And so I just think that is awesome. Okay, back to Harry and this court case. And I think this is something really key to go over because Harry, again, what really bothers me about Harry is that he's constantly proclaiming that he's there to help us, that he's there to help the world, help humanity, because the British tabloid press is awful and he's here to help fix it. And I just can't think and just can't help but wonder, are you really fixing this for us, or is this all about you and Meghan Markle? Because it really feels like the more you read about it, the more self-obsessed he is. And the more he cannot see beyond his own reasoning. So even though he has these great proclamations about what he wants to do and why he's doing it, really at the end of the day, none of it makes sense and none of it really serves anybody else but Meghan Markle and the negative press he and Meghan felt like she's received and that they feel like is unfair towards her. Now, granted, yes, Meghan Markle was the target of some negative press, but honey, you're in the royal family. That's part of the deal. That's part of the deal. And that's something you just have to deal with. There's no getting around it. Catherine suffered with it. Camilla, oh man, Camilla was raked over the coals for years. And some of it sometimes was deserved, especially in the case of Charles and Camilla. Obviously, they were having an affair. But there is a desire, especially if royals are getting taxpayer funds to a certain extent to live their lifestyles, to represent the UK, there is a level of scrutiny that just doesn't exist for normal celebrities. And Meghan Markle, in her idea, she was a celebrity. She wasn't a royal. She was a celebrity. She was royal too, but that was in addition to she was like a higher level of Hollywood in her own mind. But that's not how royalty works. Royalty, because you are subject to the taxpayers, you are subject to the citizens. Yes, they do have the right to search through your life to a certain extent because guess what? The security for Meghan Markle's weddings and some other aspects of it too, to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars, was paid by the taxpayers for her wedding, for her home, for her child. So many different things that were paid for by the taxpayers, by other countries Harry and Meghan were visiting on behalf of the United Kingdom. And because of that, yes, there is a level of scrutiny. And as I was reading through some of the bits of Harry's testimony, I didn't get the full thing. I couldn't find the full thing online. But you get the sense that he's somehow equating or starting to equate what happened in the phone hacking scandal, which happened in the 2000s, to what happened to Meghan Markle, which are not the same thing. Harry even went as far to say that they got things through illegal means for Meghan. And I was like, how exactly? There's been a lot of reports that even though she claims somebody broke into her house, that wasn't actually the case, that people knocked on her door to try to get her attention and she didn't answer and all of a sudden that's illegal, or that her friends sold things, her family sold things to the press, all these sorts of things. That's not illegal, Harry. That's just life if you are royal. And he also tends to blame all the collapse of his other relationships on the tabloids. And I can't help but also think, Harry, you do know, right, that some of that might have been you. But Harry's whole mind, everything that's wrong in his life can be sourced to the British tabloids. But the result of that is that Harry then is dismissing any of his bad behavior that could contribute to the circus, as Meghan called it, because Meghan complained that all the media were hyping up this letter that she gave to Charles and that he gave to her, and we all believe pretty much that she was the one who leaked the story about this private letter, and then she's calling us the circus for dredging it up. It's like, but you dredged it up first. We're just reporting on it. We're just analyzing it because you've given us things to analyze. Because at the end of the day, and I will try to end on this if I remember my whole source of how I'm doing it, is that Harry and I think Meghan too are under the very, very delusional belief that the more they talk, the more they explain, the more they give us information, that somehow it'll make things better for them. But history should be the teacher here, and that nothing has gone well for them. The more they try to explain themselves, actually the worse things go for them. And that Harry and Meghan just don't seem to understand that is crazy to me. But it's just so incredibly evident that Harry and Meghan both are completely under this belief that if they could just get the British media to capitulate, the American media to capitulate, everybody to go by the directory of the Sussexes, that this is how they want every royal report reported, this is how they want everything addressed, then they would be fine. But free speech is a real thing, and also we do have the right as well, because Harry and Meghan continue to use the titles of a foreign country to push their own agenda in the United States, as we do have the authority and the right, I think, to look into them and to question their intentions, because they're using political power and influence of a government they no longer represent to influence a government here in the United States. And to me, that's pretty reprehensible, because they have no right to do that. They can live here, but don't ever mess with my government, with your royal title. Meghan has called politicians in this country going, "Hi, I'm Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex." That should never, ever happen. And that the monarchy is continuing to allow that is something I really hope they address in the future, because it just puts the monarchy in a very, very bad light that they're not able to manage Harry and Meghan to this extent. But as you go through some of these quotes, you can see how the delusions, the paranoia, the narcissism is really so consuming to Harry that he does not know why things are twisted badly for him. It's a mystery to him. It's an absolute mystery to Harry. Okay, so to start off with, we'll go with a report from the BBC, which I thought was rather interesting. One quote says, and this is from Harry's testimony, he was kept out of the loop about the phone hacking scandal, not least because it would have infuriated me and I would have insisted that I be allowed to take action, especially given my extremely difficult relationship with the press at that time. So Harry, I think, was kept out of the loop for a lot of reasons. Number one, he's not that bright. Number two, they knew he was unstable at the time and they knew he was probably abusing drugs and alcohol. So why would you give a guy who's abusing drugs and alcohol information about people who might be spying on him? And I think the paranoia and the delusion was somewhat always there when it came to his relationship with the press and his family. So they didn't want to magnify that. And he just wasn't a cool customer. They couldn't reason with him like they could William. And I think oftentimes the palace tried to protect Harry from himself by not telling him certain things, because they're like, we can't trust you not to take this too far. We can't trust you to fully understand perhaps some of the things going on behind the scenes. And I think that's what we see here. He also goes on to say, what I complain of here is about illegal and unlawful activities. And that is something which I feel incredibly strongly about, not just in a personal capacity, but as part of the role I have always taken on in terms of my duty to stand against things which are unjust. Well, here's the huge problem here. You're not standing against things that are unjust. You're standing against things that bother you. That's completely different. And also, what's key here is that some of this illegal stuff happened well over a decade ago, almost 2 decades ago in some instances. And so you're trying to punish people now for something that happened years ago. And while they did settle with William and they didn't settle with you, is that really your gripe right now? Is that they perhaps gave William a lot of money and didn't give you a lot of money? That could be rather interesting to consider. And at the same time, yet again, this isn't things that are happening anymore. Have you heard of a phone hacking scandal recently? Not really. And so this is all about a gripe that happened years ago. And again, once again, because Harry needs a target for his rage and he doesn't know how to handle things. This is a guy who supposedly has been in hardcore therapy. You just still get the sense that he cannot see his own faults and he cannot properly process things that have happened to him. He has to have a target for his anger. And still, it remains the press. And some of that is understandable. Yet at the same time, he's confusing, which somebody else pointed out, what happens on social media with actual news reports. He's not reading the actual news. He reads the headlines and reacts negatively to them. And I get some of the things from my own videos. People read the headlines, and then I can tell in their comment, you didn't actually watch the video, did you? That's just something to keep in mind as well. The reason for this was to avoid the situation where a member of the royal family would have to sit in the witness box and recount the specific details of the private and highly sensitive voicemails that had been intercepted. So part of Harry's court case here is he's going after these phone hacking and how they got these certain voicemails. And also the royal palace apparently, allegedly, decided to tell the news group newspapers that, hey, we won't pursue civil action right now, but at some point later in the day, we will get this all settled. And allegedly, the news group newspaper said, sure. And part of the reason for that is that they didn't want to put the royals on the stand, which makes sense, because why would you want them on the stand? Especially somebody like Harry, a complete loose cannon. Can you guarantee what he'll say? And Harry wants his day in court, but does he realize that most likely not only will he be questioned by his own lawyer, but by an aggressive defense attorney. And do you know what a defense attorney's job is? Is to poke holes in your freaking case. Their job is to poke in every aspect of your life, ratchet up your tension to 11, and get you to say something that negatively impacts your case. And while William, I think, could stand on the stand and probably do that to a certain extent, Harry, I don't think could. Because I don't think, A, he's smart enough to understand that that's the outcome of this, is that he will be put on the stand and they will break him over the coals because that is convenient for them and they want to win their case. This legal stuff, I don't think Harry totally knows what's going on. Him and Meghan have had roughly a pretty easy ride, and he's hoping, I think, and they've both hoped throughout this whole thing that they would just get buckets of money from the press for suing. But the unfortunate thing is they've ticked off the press. The press doesn't like them. And it also actually behooves the press to continue these lawsuits because they get headlines out of them. That's what the Daily Mail figured out. They're like, well, we lost to Meghan Markle, but we actually probably made more in the back end through our articles about this case than we had to freaking pay her. So why not keep doing it? And that's what everything's going on. Harry has two other cases too against the Daily Mirror and the Daily Mail. Again, will this fix his problem? No. This won't fix this problem. I'm so sorry, Harry. I wish there could be a magic wand and everything could be better for you. But no, this will not fix your problem. The problem is your actions. It's not the press. It's the press reporting on your actions, interpreting your actions, rather than you just letting certain things go and just doing the work. When you guys cite Archwell, and we've all find out that you didn't actually work that much for it. They only gave $3 million and somehow are keeping $10 million in the bank. Guess what? People will ask questions. If you want to live in a totalitarian state where you can manage and control every aspect of your news coverage, I hear Pyongyang is nice this time of year. You can go and live there. And you can come the supreme leader, and they'll do all those things for you. But here in the free world and the free press, guess what? You're going to get negative press. That's just life, bud. That's just life. You just got to learn to deal with it and move on. I know that's hard, but you'll be better for it. So Harry was asked to drop this case. He says, I was summoned to Buckingham Palace and specifically told to drop the legal actions because they have an effect on all the family. This was a direct request, or rather demand, from my father, Edward Young, and my father's private secretary, Clive Alderon. Yes, Harry, it does affect your entire family, and they don't want to do this. They don't want to do this. They don't want you to do this. Yeah, of course. And they all know something that you're too deluded to understand, and your lawyers are just more than happy to indulge for you, is that this won't change diddly squat. So the best thing is just to let it ride, get settlements where it's appropriate, like the phone hacking thing. Yes, that was appropriate. Catherine being photographed topless, yes, that was appropriate. Those were appropriate cases. This, especially because it's so far past, is not. But it seems like it's not just about the phone hacking. He's equating it to Meghan Markle's experience with actual press instead of the non-press she used to get before, and he's equating it to his former girlfriend's experience. Like, Chelsea Davy was hacked, Cressida never was. So again, he's equating all these things that happened over the span of what, about 20 years together, which doesn't work because they don't all impact each other in the same way. And so he's equating all these things where they're different time periods. The media is different. I mean, the media landscape now is so different than 2005 when some of this phone hacking first came to light. So completely different. You have social media now. Whereas now the paparazzi industry doesn't really almost exist anymore the way it used to, because celebrities post their own pictures. So if they're posting their own pictures of the kids, then the price on a picture of a celebrity's child goes way down because they're already posting them. So there's no reason for you to go get it. Yes, there are certain instances where that's no longer the case, but really the paparazzi game just doesn't even exist anymore. And it says NGN, so this is News Group Newspapers, which seems very redundant to me, has denied that any secret agreement existed, with Anthony Hudson, KC, saying the prince's claim was flatly inconsistent with other parts of his case and that there was extreme vagueness surrounding the circumstances of the alleged deal. And the justice caught on to this. So Justice Fancourt said in his new evidence was troubling him as it contradicted his original argument that he could not sue before 2019 because he did not have knowledge of the phone hacking case. And so the justice questioned Harry how he could simultaneously state he did not have knowledge before 2019 to bring a claim, but also that he was prevented from bringing a claim in 2012. He said, another thing that is troubling me is what appears to be a factual inconsistency in the current pleaded case about the way the Duke of Sussex did not have the knowledge before 2019 to bring a claim, and that your proposed amendment, which seems to say that he would have brought a claim in 2012 except for the secret agreement. David Sherborne, Harry's lawyer, insisted he brought a claim in 2012. It would have been totally different, but the judge shot back. I'm talking about the factual inconsistencies in the way the case is pleaded. The judge also questioned why Mr. Sherborne had suddenly introduced this new evidence without making an application to submit it to court. Ooh, so Harry is caught out here by the judge, basically saying, hey, there's some inconsistencies in your statement here. There is some factual evidence that is not accurate, because if you said you knew about this in 2012 and didn't bring a case in 2019, and then all of a sudden you're arguing that you didn't know about it until 2019, that might be a bit of an issue. And obviously, Harry and Meghan are not the most reliable narrators when it comes to a little thing called the truth. And once again, this is being called out. It was called out in Meghan's case against the Daily Mail. And so it'll be interesting to see how this proceeds and if this proceeds forwards, because if it is determined that, hey, you should have filed this years ago, or you should have gotten in on William's case, because at one point he was attached to William's case, is my understanding. This could have been settled. This could have been resolved. But I think Harry, again, has been so twisted up by Meghan, he's missed out on some opportunities just based on the fact of they've decided not to do certain things. And whoops, oopsie doopsie, that just, once again, it comes back to bite them in the behind. So when it came to Harry's wedding, apparently, according to his own witness statement, which again was 31 pages, he wanted to bar the News Group newspapers from the event entirely if they didn't give him a groveling apology. So again, this Harry and Meghan continued effort to elicit a griping, just pleading apology to them and just excoriating, having that whoever that person is excoriating themselves about how terrible they've been. That's been a part of Harry and Meghan's MO for a very long time. So here's what he says. How could they be permitted to have a ringside seat and then sell millions of newspapers and clicks on the back of it when all they have sought to do is destroy our relationship, destroy my wife with their endless lies while giving a platform to her abusers, when most of these journalists knew the truth anyways because of the illegal methods they had used to dig into her past. Okay, what illegal methods, Harry? Phone hacking is illegal. Going and knocking at her door is not. Talking to her friends is not. Talking to her family is not. All these things that mostly happen to Meghan Markle were not illegal. That's just what happens when you date and marry a prince and you are part of a government entity. That is what royals are. They are part of the government. They are state representatives. They are national representatives. They represent culture, history, heritage, so many things. That is a different level of scrutiny than trying to be a Hollywood starlet. Entire different level of scrutiny. So that Meghan didn't understand this and tried to get Harry to believe this is a bit ridiculous, but you also see where he's conflating these two things. What happened to Meghan Markle was not illegal. What happened to his other girlfriends at some times was, particularly Chelsea Davy, but I feel like she always gets thrown under the bus. In addition, yes, Harry, the press will be there. The William was also angry at the press. He is still, to a certain extent, angry at the press. But you have to understand that sometimes life has to go on and you need the press. You need the press to tell the public your agenda, to give you good press coverage. And do you know how they give you good press coverage? You interact positively with them, and then that happens. And royals have been made fun of for centuries. For centuries. You are not the only one. I feel like him and Meghan think they are the only people on the entire planet who have been wronged. And he's talking about, abusers. The press isn't abusers. Yes, perhaps some people online are, but the press is not. And again, they're conflating these two things. Social media trolls, which are trolls and they exist, and the actual media press, which again had the right to dig into Meghan Markle because she was going to be a huge part of the UK government. And she continues to use the title the Duchess of Sussex. If she stopped using it and stopped trying to connect herself so much to the British monarchy and trade off it, I think she'd be in a lot better shape, bud, and so would you. He also said he told his brother that they need to get permission to push for a resolution for the phone hacking claims and a formal apology from Rupert Murdoch before any of his people are allowed anywhere near the wedding, or words to that effect. It was the perfect opportunity, he believed, to force their hand. Prince William was very understanding and supportive and suggested his brother speak to the Queen, who gave her permission to push things forward. In an imploring email sent to several aides in December 2017, the Duke said, "They are playing us, and Sally needs to feel fully supported so she can have the confidence to push on without feeling isolated." So that was one of their communications people. A second email sent in February 2018 asked for the latest, adding, "They are running out of time." In March, he pushed again, noting the fast approaching wedding date as well as his grandmother's support, putting her in the position of having to invite these people into Windsor Castle without a resolution is not an option. Eventually, the Duke was informed shortly before his wedding that NGN was not in a position to apologize because it would seriously undermine their settlement strategy across all the other claims. Harry was afforded one small concession in that the royal rota, comprising the royal correspondence that he so despised, was not allowed in St. George's Chapel on the day of the wedding. He said it was a small victory, but one I celebrated hugely. Probably another reason why the British press don't like you. And none of this is going to make your life any easier. Again, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. If you want to live in a totalitarian state and you want to be the ruler of it, I'm sure you are in your little Montecito hovel, you can do that. But to ask an entire government to just print glowing stories of you and your wife when she's spending $100,000 on a maternity dress from a designer that is not British, yeah, that's not going to go well. It's not. And again, he is answerable to the people. Meghan Markle was answerable to the people. She just didn't believe that, and Harry just went along with what she wanted. And once again, of course, it just keeps blowing up in their faces. He went on, this is another bent from his unique perspective. The Duke used the court document to proffer his own advice about how journalism as a profession can be saved from the guy who barely graduated high school, guys. He can save journalism, even though he's not that bright. By exposing those working in the media who have hijacked the privileges and powers of the press. He said the most disturbing and dangerous part of all was that journalists were all ganging up to protect each other. It is clear to me that the tabloid press is the mothership of online trolling, he went on. This is brainwashing at the highest level. People die as a result of trolling. And people will continue to take their own lives when they can't see any other way out. How much more blood will stain their typing fingers before someone can put a stop to this madness? The Duke said that both the country and the British public deserve to know the depths of what is happening both then and now. As someone who has had a front row seat for 3 decades, he suggested that was now down to him to make sure this unlawful behavior is exposed. We will be better off for it, he said. One could say there is no greater public interest argument than exposing the unlawful practices of those that act in the name of the public interest, unless, of course, they are above the law as they plainly believe. Well, I think that can completely apply to Harry and Meghan as well. They believe they're above everything. They're above the law. They're above journalists. They're above any type of criticism, any type of commentary on their lives. They are above it. They just want PR puff pieces that just repeat exactly what they say and show how great and wonderful and gracious they are. And Harry's missing actually the bigger problem with media right now, which is media sources telling us they're unbiased when they're clearly biased, because people who can't look through the double talk, who can't see through the obvious slant of those news reports, then they believe something that might not necessarily be true, because they don't know that even though they're believing that this outlet is neutral when it's not. That is a bigger problem with media right now. That is a huge glaring issue, which is why I think actually Elon Musk taking away the blue check mark and saying people have to pay for it is actually a good thing, because it forces people to evaluate what is a good source and a bad source for themselves, rather than allowing the media, the company to determine who gets particular check marks, who is worthy. It's an elite practice to determine, well, I'm a celebrity, I deserve a blue check mark. This news outlet, well, I like them, they deserve a blue check mark. This news outlet that I don't like, they don't deserve a blue check mark. That is twisting, that is manipulating the public, rather than saying, I have a blue check mark on Twitter, I pay for it, do I mind? No. Would I pay for the gray one, which costs like $1,000 a month if I could? Sure, because again, it allows me to equal the playing field in some ways, rather than having the media outlets, given my status and my account, because I do say things about Harry and Meghan and do criticize them. Would I get a blue check mark otherwise? Maybe not. Even if I had 100,000 subscribers, I might not be able to get that, just because whoever is evaluating those blue check marks doesn't like my work. Not that my work isn't good, not that my work isn't valid, but they just don't believe in it. And that's the world Harry and Meghan want. It's so elitist to believe that you're the only one who can determine what information people get, even if sometimes the information is wrong. As the public, it's our responsibility to evaluate it ourselves, to think through that report. Is that report right? Is it wrong? Is there elements of truth? Is there elements of falsehood? If us as a general public, sometimes we're more critically thinking, that would be a good thing. But Harry doesn't want that. Other people in the elite media don't want that. They don't want you to think for yourself. They want to think for you. And that's what that blue check mark was to a certain extent. That's dangerous. And again, that's what Harry and Meghan want. They want this elitist mentality, even though they say they're trying to help you, the public. What they really want is an elitist will tell you what to think, will tell you how to look at us, rather than you evaluating us and making a determination based on what you see in our behavior. And he goes on to say, I feel there's a responsibility to expose this criminal activity in the name of public interest, rather than ignore it or work with it for self-preservation. Again, Harry is equating what happened to Meghan Markle with the illegal practices of phone hacking. They're not the same thing. It should not be 31 pages for him to discuss this phone hacking thing. This thing happened years ago. And apparently, according to what I read, and I apologize, I didn't go and double check, but that his phone was only hacked 9 times, but Kate's was hacked 155 times to something like that. Her phone was hacked a lot. William's phone was hacked a lot more than Harry's ever was. And so really the true victims here are Catherine and William. And William has always pushed back against the intrusive, abusive practices of the press. Whereas Harry is not wanting to push against those. He's just wanting to push against those he doesn't like because they didn't provide good coverage for him and his wife. That's the difference. The distorted view of his life portrayed by the tabloids meant that members of the public he met on a day-to-day basis throughout the course of his work could easily have decided they hated him so much they would stab him, he said. He said it was truly appalling that the newspapers had used his mental health challenges to their own advantage. Despite them all knowing about what I was dealing with throughout the years, they kept on doubling down their efforts rather than letting up, he said. That is grotesque and sadistic, and no doubt they were hoping for a total and very public breakdown. When he went to meet ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy at the airport and encountered the paparazzi there, he had no idea whether they were reaching for cameras from their bags or drawing some kind of weapon. Okay, this delusion that he is like the main focus of the press and that everybody was out to kill him. Again, is he trying to help you, Joe Public, or is he obsessed with himself? I think that's pretty clear there. He's obsessed with himself. Yes, there's a certain element of that is true, but he was also the most popular royal at some point. Charles has had eggs thrown at him. The only one who actually had a recent threat against their life, a true threat, was the Queen of England, probably because of what Harry and Meghan said on Oprah Winfrey. So Harry, who's responsible there. He went on to say any individual of interest to the press is a target, a victim of their business model, and there is nowhere to hide, he added. In my view, in order to save journalism as a profession, journalists need to expose those unethical people in the media that have stolen or hijacked the privileges and powers of the press and have used illegal or unlawful means for their own commercial gain and to further their policy agenda. And again, Harry doesn't know Adam from Eve. Harry is a dullard. Does he know anything about how the press actually works? No, he doesn't. Can he write a coherent paper? I would guess probably not. So him saying that he's there to save journalism, even though he's never been to college, not to say that people who don't go to college aren't smart, but he's proven time and time again he's not the brightest bulb in the box. So that he's going to help save us from ourselves, a guy who hasn't been to college, doesn't know really the ins and out of the journalism, and has never had a real job in his life. Yeah, he can tell us diddly squat about journalists and what journalism is supposed to be. He goes on to say, I don't know why I was kept out of the loop. So this is in regards to the phone hacking case. He said, perhaps they thought that I, being the younger brother, didn't need to know this sort of thing or wasn't equipped to deal with something so serious. He said that his brother and Brad B had a close relationship at that point. So this is the guy who did a lot of the interviews with Harry. And I know they talked a lot, but about what? I don't know. The palace was protecting Harry from Harry. They knew they couldn't trust him to understand some difficult concepts. So they decided to go with these, I hate to say it, but the smarter, more logical brother in this instance. I'm sorry, Harry. I think that's what was happening, bud. Prince says that when he was a soldier, he had neither the time nor the inclination to read newspapers. Since meeting his wife, Meghan, he has started taking an interest in what is being written about her. Again, Meghan pushing Harry to obsess about her when she obsesses also about herself. Due to the sheer astonishment of what they get away with, he says in a statement. Of the 238 news articles he cites in his evidence in his legal case, he says he was aware of no more than 10% of them at the time they were published, and that he would only normally pay attention if he saw my ugly mug on the front page and would naturally be drawn to the story. Okay, again, so this is all about you and Meghan Markle. Nobody else. It's not about the British. It's not about the people. It's not about the general public. This is about you and Meghan Markle and that you don't like your press. That's what this whole freaking case is about. The dude doesn't like his press. I'm so sorry. There was a great quote, and I'll try to get to it too at the end, where somebody was talking about, yeah, you know what? People don't like it when you lecture them and then do the exact opposite. And yeah, that's just not going to go well for you. So again, Harry and Meghan are the reason for their own bad negative press. They have nobody else to blame but themselves, guys. This is all their own doing. But yet they blame all of us and they blame the media. So the gulf between the two brothers is laid bare by Harry's revelations about the settlement William quietly received in 2020, which was about $1.8 million, 1.1 million pounds, and which he claimed was further evidence of the secret pact between the royal family and the media. Making a clear dig at his brother, he said he had discovered during the course of litigation that William appeared to know an awful lot more about phone hacking than he did. did, although he did not tell me if that was the case. The Duke then used his witness statement to reveal William had received a huge sum of money from NGN in 2020. Not for the first time, Harry queried why he and his brother had received different treatment. NGN still settled his claim for a huge sum of money in 2020 without subjecting him to a similar strikeout application without any of the public being told, and seemingly with some favorable deal in return for him going quietly, so to speak. This goes to prove that the existence of a secret agreement between the institution and senior executives at NGN. Otherwise, he claimed William would not have waited until 2019 to pursue his complaints when senior royal aides had brought their own claims and settled them back in 2012. This is part of civil litigation. I can't speak on a legal terms, but does it make sense that maybe the palace decided, hey, we're just going to wait until you settle these other claims, then we'll bring ours and you'll settle it? Is that like a secret pact? Is that something that's conspiracy that... No, I really don't think that is. I think he's making really a mountain out of a molehill there. And again, sometimes these backdoor dealings do happen and it benefits all. And apparently William gave his portion to charity and maybe even to the Invictus Games, which Harry received. And this, to me, just screams that he's jealous his brother got $1 million and he didn't. That's all that screams to me. He says, if I'd been allowed to put in a claim earlier and hold NGM properly to account, then of course I would have, especially given my antipathy towards NGN and the tabloid press in general. The Duke said he was not surprised that senior courtiers had opted not to discuss phone hacking with him when he was younger because he was considered the irresponsible brother. Yeah, no kidding, really? Given this whole thing, this whole temper tantrum, it should be no surprise at all that they decided it was probably best not to include you on this. Said shortly before his wedding in 2018, he had been told by Mr. Tyrrell and of Harbottle and Lewis that nothing could be done as NGN were not in a position to apologize to Her Majesty the Queen and the rest of the royal family at that stage on account of the fact that if they did so, they would have to admit that not only was the news of the world involved in phone hacking, but also the Sun, and that was something they couldn't afford to do until the end of litigation. This would be true. In a civil case, you don't want to tell the whole world that yes, you apologize because that admits fault. And if you're trying to settle other cases, again, you don't want to go that route until you absolutely have to or once everything has been settled. The prince was on an official tour in Africa when he informed my grandmother and father by phoning them, and also Prince William and the late Queen's private secretary, Sir Edward Young, of our intention to make a public statement should it be needed. His solicitors issued a court claim on September 27th, 2019. Lots going on here, and Harry really trying to undermine his family. I think all at the behest of Meghan Markle. This all goes back to the fact that Meghan Markle had some bad press and she couldn't deal with it. That's what this all is about. Goes on to say James Murdoch. So this is interesting. So Harry met James Murdoch, one of the Murdoch family, at a private, very exclusive, very, very expensive private retreat that the normal public wasn't allowed to. So yes, he really does think about Joe Public, guys. He really does. Says James Murdoch, the younger son of Rupert, struck Harry as a kindred spirit when they met around 2020 because they had both broken away from the constraints of their families. The prince says in his witness statement that he met James at a Google camp where he made a real effort to try to come and talk to me despite my security detail trying to keep me away from him. Presumably they thought I'd get into a heated argument with him or worse. That doesn't make you look good, Harry. That makes you look like a loose cannon, a guy who even your own security is worried that you'll get physical with somebody you don't like. That is ugly. That is ugly. That is not something you want to admit, especially when that could be used against you in maybe a future case that you may not like. You know, like a child custody battle, if you and your wife got divorced. Those are the type of things you should not generally admit, and something that could be used against you in court as well. I can see a defense lawyer going up there and going, so you don't like the news group newspapers? Harry's like, yeah. And he's like, well, there's Rupert Murdoch right there. What do you want to do to him right now? Oh, I want to go after him. And I want to, yell in his face and It's like, that's not going to go well for you. All they have to do is trot out a couple of the Murdochs, parade them in front of your face, and see your face get red and angry and raged. Like, this is so easy to see. Like, oh my gosh. So he doesn't see this and how dangerous this is for him to admit. Like, in a court case, you only want to admit the bare minimum. A 31-page statement, that's 31 pages. I have no doubt the defense team is going over and they'll have 31,000 questions for you, all meant to push your buttons and make you mad. That's all they're going to do, Harry. Or embarrass you, or identify things for you, inconsistency. That's all they're going to do in those 31 pages, to come up with 31,000 questions that are going to drive you nuts to see you crack. And that's why royals generally, it's probably not a good idea to go on the stand. Even celebrities have proven that too. You know, you think of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. Did that really go well for her? No. No, it did not. The prince says, I got the distinct impression that having broken away from the cult that is the Murdoch dynasty, he was starting to show signs that he wanted to do things differently and make amends for the past. Given that he had broken away from his family's history and I was about to do the same with mine, I felt that we were kindred spirits of sorts. He and the Duchess of Sussex later had a Zoom call with him and his wife, and during an on-stage interview at a JP Morgan event, the prince congratulated James, who was in the audience, on going in a different direction from his father. Oh gosh, does he really need to tell us that? Again, that just, to me, that just screams so narcissistic, so self-involved, and he's claiming he wants to help you. He's claiming he wants to help the world, guys. He's going to save the world one narcissistic statement at a time. And here's another thing, which again makes me really question Harry. It says, the prince says in his statement that he was absolutely shocked when Rebecca Brooks, the current chief executive of News UK, was cleared of phone hacking by a jury at the Old Bailey in 2014. Ms. Brooks was an editor of the News of the World when some of the alleged phone hacking took place, and in her executive role, she was later deeply involved in discussions with Buckingham Palace about how to resolve the royal family's complaints about hacking. The prince says, having met her once with my father when she was hosting the Sun Military Awards at the Imperial War Museum in London, and having seen her essentially masquerading as someone she wasn't, by using the military community to try and cover up the appalling things that she and her newspaper had done, I felt the surprise at her acquittal even more personally, especially as I had been duped into thinking that she was okay at our meeting. Harry, I could say the same to you. I could say the same to you. You're doing the Invictus Games, and yet at the same time, it now went from being something altruistic to me wondering how much money you're getting kicked back for on the back end, because now it has to be a money generating exercise, because for you, it needs to make money because you need to pay off Meghan Markle's wardrobe. She wore $65,000 of new clothes, as far as we're aware, at the Invictus Games last year. $65,000. Was that paid for by Harry and Meghan or the Invictus Games? And so Harry saying that she was using the military to shield himself, well, I think he's doing the same to shield himself from criticism. And like Meghan Markle uses claims of racism to shield herself from criticism. And as well, it's called the judicial system, and they acquitted her. That's how things work. A lot of us in the United States are still mad that Casey Anthony got away with probably killing her little girl. Is that what sometimes happens in the courts? Yes. Is there an ultimate judge? Yes, there is that as well. So even if perhaps justice wasn't vetted out here, it will be vetted out at some point. But again, that's not Harry's job. That's not Harry's job to demand that certain things go his way when he wants them to. And him doing that is just going to end up in tears, I think, in a lot of ways. But here's the most interesting thing. And I found this and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense, because Harry is living in the land of delusion. And because of that, to a certain extent, he thinks he's helping himself, other people, and he's really not. So this is from the BBC. It says, for instance, what was the purpose of Prince Harry in revealing that his brother, the Prince of Wales, had reached a private settlement with the publishers of The Sun and the former News of the World? It has been claimed in some places, not least on social media, that it was an attempt to undermine Prince William, and by extension, the wider royal family, at a time when they were hoping to build up a more positive public mood. But that is very much not the intention, according to sources close to Prince Harry, who is said to have been following the events in the higher court in London by video link from the US. From Harry's perspective, the reason for unveiling Prince William's deal was purely defensive measure, a shield, not a sword, as a necessary piece of evidence to stop the newspaper group from closing down Harry's claim on the grounds of it being out of time. Okay, to me, that says something very, very key. Harry constantly thinks all that he is doing is somehow helping himself, his family, and the royal family by extension. He is so deluded and so confused in his mind that he thinks this is helping when it's really just doing the exact opposite. That explains so much about Harry and Meghan. They always think they're helping themselves, and then when it ends up disastrous, they are so confused. They're so confused. How could that go wrong? We are perfect. Everything looks good. Everything's great. We're doing all that we're supposed to do. And then it blows up in their faces, and they just are left with the wreckage going, what happened to our carefully laid, evaluated plan on all of this? Because it should have been perfect. It should have been perfect. And it wasn't. But that's because they fundamentally did not understand the problems they were inviting. They did not understand that, you know what, getting mad and angry at the press, at the end of the day, that doesn't really get you anywhere because you still need them. And they still need you. So you have to have this symbiotic relationship where you give them some stuff, but not too much. And Catherine and William have very much been able to craft that careful balance, and so have a lot of other royals as well. But Harry and Meghan don't want a balance. They want propaganda. They want assimilation. They want control, which is something they fundamentally cannot have. The purpose of the media is to call out inconsistencies, to call out lies, to call out public figures for their bad behavior. But Harry and Meghan don't want any of that. They want you to just go on as if nothing's wrong, to believe every word that comes out of their mouths, to not question them at all, because they know exactly what they're doing, and they know they're helping you. Don't you know that they are helping you? But if you don't feel helped by Harry and Meghan just don't know what to do about that. And so they have to craft all these crazy court cases to try to get the public on their side, to try to show the public that they really do care, when they don't. This is a self-obsessed exercise. This is not to help anybody but Meghan Markle and a little bit Harry. Because Harry's life, I think, to a certain extent, is miserable under her because she hates her press. And it's so hard, I think, in their house to deal with all the negative press all the time. So they're constantly trying to change the narrative, and it just doesn't go well. And the way you change the narrative, truly do, is just by working, being present, and stop complaining. That's what Catherine and William do so excellently. They don't complain. They just get on with the work, and they reap the benefits of it. But Harry and Meghan, they can't do that, and they will be dragged down by the media constantly. They will always have to fight against the media. This will be a never-ending game, and it'll be a fruitless effort, and something that will drive them both nuts, when the most reasonable thing to do is just to capitulate to a certain extent. Just to admit there's certain things you cannot change, exchange the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this video. I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.